Hey everyone, and a special shout out to all our UPSC aspirants gearing up for those international relations exams.
Absolutely.
We're tackling global governance today.
Yeah.
It might sound a little textbooky,
A little dry, maybe.
but trust us.
Oh, yeah. It's anything but.
It's crucial for understanding how the world, actually operates. We're diving deep into some fascinating ideas from a text that breaks down different models of world politics.
Kind of like frameworks for understanding how nations interact, right?
Exactly. And get this, folks, understanding these models.
It's not just about acing your exam.
No, it's way beyond that, right?
Absolutely.
It's about making sense of the headlines.
Yeah, like the stuff you see every day in the news.
It's about those big forces shaping our world,
Exactly. Those big, complex forces that are out there.
Okay, let's jump right in. Our source, the text we're looking at, kicks off by defining global governance.
Oh, okay.
And they say it's like this collection of activities, rules, and mechanisms.
Both formal and informal.
Right. Formal, informal, it's all in there.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of jargony though, right?
Yeah, a bit.
But essentially it's about how countries try to, work together on the global stage, right?
Exactly. It's about coordination.
Coordination.
More than control, really.
Coordination.
And, this whole idea of global governance,
Yeah.
it's become even more important since the end of the Cold War. I mean, think about it. Globalization has made everything so interconnected.
Oh, for sure. It's like we're all in this, global village now, for better or worse.
Right, exactly. And so this concept of global governance,
Yeah.
it's key to understanding how all these complex relationships play out, between nations and international organizations.
Totally. Okay, now, this is where it gets really interesting. Our source,
Yeah.
they throw down a challenge here. They compare global governance to 3 other ways that the world, could be organized.
It's a really clever approach, actually.
Oh, totally.
It highlights what's unique about global governance.
Yeah, by, contrasting it with these other models.
Exactly.
It's like choose your own adventure for international relations.
I like that. Okay, so let's take a quick look at these models.
All right, model number 1.
International anarchy.
Ooh, anarchy. No world government, everyone for themselves. This sounds kind of like, the Wild West or maybe a chaotic online game, one of those battle royale things.
Well, the source actually connects this to the realist school of thought in international relations.
Realism.
Yeah, big emphasis on state sovereignty and self-sys there.
Okay, so in this model, every country is basically on its own, responsible for its own security and well-being.
Exactly.
So it's a survival of the fittest kind of world. But wouldn't that lead to, constant conflict?
Historically, yeah. Think about the security dilemma.
Okay.
When one country tries to beef up its defenses,
Right.
the others feel threatened.
Like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, and then they do the same.
Right.
So tensions escalate.
Even if nobody really wants a war.
Exactly. It's kind of a self-fulfilling
It's
prophecy.
a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought. But wait, the source, they also point out that, things aren't so anarchic anymore, especially after 1945. So what changed?
Well, for one thing, we saw the rise of international organizations.
The
Think about the European Union.
EU.
Yeah, great example of how countries can choose to pool their sovereignty. They get mutual benefits. They even give up some individual power.
Right.
For the greater good.
So the EU is kind of like, it's a challenge to this idea of pure anarchy.
Yeah, it really is.
Because it shows that cooperation,
It can emerge,
even without a world government.
forcing people to play nice.
Right, exactly. It's like they realize, hey, you know what? We're actually stronger together.
Yeah, there's a lot of logic in that.
It's like it's self-interest driving them toward, working together.
Precisely. So the EU is a fascinating case study in how, even in a system where there's no one in charge, cooperation can still flourish.
Okay, on to model number 2, global hegemony. This one sounds a bit more like, an empire.
Yeah, like one superpower running the show.
Yeah, calling all the shots. Our source, they use the example of USA for this one, right?
Right. They delve into this idea of the
It's
U.S.
like World War II.
Exactly,
Right.
as a potential hegemon, and they highlight its role.
In shaping the institutions?
Yeah, establishing
The
institutions.
UN, the World Bank,
The IMF.
all the big players. So the U.S. basically had a hand in shaping the very system of global governance we're talking about.
Yeah, that's one of the key points here.
But isn't that kind of a paradox? Like they set up these institutions,
Yeah.
but then, they also might be trying to dominate them.
It is a very complex relationship.
It's like a love-hate thing, maybe.
Haha, in a way, yeah. And the source, they acknowledge this. The U.S. has played a big role,
Yeah.
but it's not always been smooth sailing.
No, not always. They talk about the UN, right?
Right.
As an example, sometimes the U.S. cooperates, sometimes it clashes. It's all about, those power dynamics, right?
Exactly. It's a constant balancing act.
Trying to, advance their own interests while also
maintaining some kind of global stability.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, and that brings up a big question for our listeners, and this is especially for you UPSC folks.
Okay, sure.
Can a hegemon, like a superpower, can they truly be committed to global governance? Or will they always, put their own agenda first?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And, as other powers rise...
Which is happening right now.
Things are shifting.
Yeah.
So if the U.S. isn't the sole hegemon anymore...
If that changes.
How does that change global governance?
How will it evolve?
That's what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, last but not least, we've got model number 3, world government.
All right, world government.
This one sounds like...
straight out of science fiction, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Like a single entity ruling the whole planet.
Yeah, it's giving me Star Wars vibes.
Haha, I get it.
But our source, they're not actually saying that this is the way to go.
Right. Yeah.
They're using this model to contrast with global governance.
Right. To show us what global governance isn't.
Okay, so it's not about erasing all the countries?
Nope.
No borders.
Not about creating some kind of global megastate.
Right. It's more about finding ways for countries to work together.
While still respecting their sovereignty.
Right, like a balancing act.
Yeah, a delicate balancing act.
Okay, so we've got anarchy, we've got one superpower calling the shots, and then we've got this sci-fi world government. Where does global governance fit into all of this? That's what we're going to pack when we come back.
It's going to be good. All right, so we're back, and we've got these 3 models of world politics. Let's unpack them a little more. Starting with international anarchy.
Okay, anarchy.
It's easy to imagine, right? Every country just fending for itself.
Yeah, it's like a free-for-all.
Right. But the reality is it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, we talked about, the security dilemma and all that.
Right.
But the source, they make a good point. They suggest that even without a world government, states are kind of being pushed toward cooperation anyway.
They are. They are.
So how's that happening?
Well, think about the big global challenges we're facing right now.
Okay.
Climate change, pandemics.
Cyber threats.
These are issues that no single country can handle on its own.
Right.
It's in every country's best interest to cooperate, even if there's no one forcing them to.
So it's like, even in this system where, in theory, everyone's kind of out for themselves.
Yeah.
The reality is that we're all in this together.
We are.
It's like being stuck on a life raft with a bunch of other countries, right? You might not like everyone on board,
right?
But you got to figure out how to row together if you want to survive.
I like that analogy. That's good.
Right.
Yeah. And, the source highlights how international organizations, trade agreements, all these informal networks, they create this web of interdependence. And that encourages cooperation, sometimes even makes it absolutely necessary.
It's like you're kind of forced to work together, even if you don't, necessarily want to.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to global hegemony.
Okay, hegemony, one superpower.
Our source, they focus on the USA, right? And its role in shaping the post-World War II world.
Right, because they were, the dominant power.
Exactly. But they also point out that this whole hegemonic power thing, it's not always straightforward. It's messy.
Right.
So the U.S., they played a key role setting up the UN, the World Bank, all that.
Yeah.
But their relationship with those institutions, it hasn't always been smooth sailing.
It's that paradox again, right?
It is.
They helped create these things, but they also might be trying to, control them.
And they want to have their cake and eat it, too, kind of.
A little bit.
The UN is a perfect example.
Right, because the U.S. is a permanent member of the Security Council.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of power there.
A lot of influence.
But sometimes they clash with the UN.
Oh, yeah.
They even, opt out of agreements if it doesn't suit them.
Right. So it's this constant push and pull, cooperation and tension.
Yeah.
And that raises an important question, especially for our UPSC folks out there. Can a superpower, a hegemon, can they really be committed to global governance?
Right.
Or will they always put their own interests first? That's something to think about.
That's a tough one.
is. And, with the rise of other powerful countries like we're seeing today,
Yeah, the whole landscape is changing.
things are shifting. So if the U.S. isn't the only hegemon anymore, what happens to global governance then? How does that system change?
Yeah, that's the big unknown. Okay, let's shift gears to world government.
All right, world government.
This one's a little
out there.
out there, yeah.
It's a good thought experiment, though.
Yes, it is.
Helps illustrate what global governance is not.
Right.
Because it's not about having one single centralized authority, ruling the whole planet.
Right. So no world emperor.
No world emperor.
No Death Star.
No Death Star, no. So instead of that, what we have is this kind of messy, dynamic network of states, institutions, agreements, non-state actors.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Sounds a little chaotic, honestly.
It can be.
Right.
But the key takeaway here, and I think this is really important,
Yeah.
global governance, it's not about imposing a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It's about finding ways for all these different actors to work together, even with all their differences.
So it's more about, like, managing the chaos.
Yeah, in a way. It's about navigating this this complex web of relationships, understanding what motivates each player, what their limitations are.
So it's like a giant game of 4D chess where the board is constantly changing.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Right. And the players are constantly changing their strategy.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so challenging.
And so exciting.
Exactly. It forces you to think critically, to connect the dots between events that might seem totally unrelated, to understand how power and interests and ideas all come together on a global scale.
This is goals for our UPSC folks.
It is.
But it's not just for exam prep.
Oh, absolutely not.
Anyone who wants to understand like how the world actually works needs to grasp these concepts.
You got to have this foundation.
Whether you're, a student, a policymaker, a business leader, or just an engaged citizen.
Absolutely.
Understanding global governance, it's crucial in this, this crazy interconnected world we live in.
It's the key.
Okay, so we've explored these three models.
Yeah.
But our source, they go a little deeper.
Yeah.
Right? They really dig into the nature of global governance itself.
They do.
And they highlight, how complex it is.
Very complex.
It's constantly evolving.
Always changing.
What are some of the key takeaways there?
Well, one of the most important points is that global governance isn't static.
Okay.
It's not like a set of rules or institutions that are just fixed in stone.
It's more fluid than that.
Yeah, it's a dynamic process. It's all about negotiation, adaptation.
So it's like a constantly evolving ecosystem.
Exactly.
Responding to new challenges.
Yeah.
And shifting power dynamics.
Right. And that's what makes it so fascinating, It's never a finished product. It's an ongoing experiment in how to manage global affairs in a world without a world government.
We've got a lot more to explore, so let's jump right into our final segment, where we'll delve even deeper into the implications of global governance. We'll look at its strengths and weaknesses, the challenges it faces, and how understanding these concepts can help you analyze international relations topics with greater depth and nuance. All right, so we're back, and we've been talking about global governance. We've looked at different models of world politics, and we've unpacked how nations cooperate and compete on the world stage. It's complicated stuff, but it's super important if you want to understand, how the world actually works. And this is especially true for our UPSC aspirants out there, those of you getting ready to tackle that international relations paper.
Absolutely. And as we've seen, global governance is not just some abstract theory. It's about understanding those forces that are shaping real-world events, from climate change negotiations to international trade disputes to the rise of new global powers.
It's about connecting those headlines you see every day to those underlying power dynamics and institutional frameworks that are driving them, right?
Exactly.
So let's talk about the implications of all this, especially for those ambitious UPSC folks.
Mm-hmm.
How can understanding global governance, these concepts, give you an edge in your exam prep?
Well, for one thing, it helps you analyze international relations topics with a more critical and nuanced lens, I'd say. For example, think about the current debates about the UN Security Council and how effective it really is.
Right.
Is it really equipped to deal with global security threats in the 21st century? Or does its structure just reflect those outdated power dynamics from, way back when? It's a classic global governance dilemma.
Yeah, our source material really hints at these tensions.
It does.
It's not just about memorizing, the structure of the UN. It's about understanding its strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
being able to analyze its role in, specific conflicts or crises.
Right. That's how you show you really understand the subject.
Mm.
Or think about those ongoing discussions about reforming international financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. Are they really equipped to handle this, super complex globalized economy? Or do they need a makeover?
Right, like a restructure.
Yeah, to make them more inclusive, more responsive to the needs of developing countries, for instance. These are questions at the very heart of global governance debates. And they're constantly changing, evolving.
So it's not just about memorizing facts and figures. It's about being able to apply those concepts to real-world scenarios, analyze different perspectives, and formulate your own, informed argument.
Exactly. That's what those UPSC examiners are going to be looking for. They want to see that you can go beyond those textbook definitions and actually engage with the complexities of global governance in a thoughtful way. And that's what this deep dive has been all about. We've given you the tools to really dissect these issues and develop those critical thinking skills.
Now, before we wrap up, our source material leaves us with this final thought-provoking question. If global governance is all about cooperation, working together,
Yeah.
what are the biggest obstacles to making it truly effective?
That's a good question.
What do you think? Is it that national self-interest just keeps getting in the way?
It could be that.
Or the fact that power is distributed so unequally among nations?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Or maybe it's that lack of a shared vision, for a better future.
These are all valid points, and it's something for all our listeners to really think about. Global governance, at the end of the day, it's a human endeavor. It's shaped by our choices, our values, our capacity for cooperation.
Right.
There are no easy answers. But by understanding those challenges, we can start to think about how to build a more effective system, a system that's more equitable, one that can address those shared challenges and create a more just and sustainable world for everyone.
That's a great point to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the theoretical stuff
The foundation
to the real-world implications of global governance. Hopefully this deep dive has sparked some curiosity, given you some new insights, and maybe even inspired you to learn more about this fascinating field.
Absolutely. To all those UPSC aspirants out there, remember, your journey is not just about passing an exam.
Right.
It's about equipping yourselves to be informed, engaged citizens who can actually contribute to shaping a better world. So keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of your understanding.
And to all our listeners, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends.
Spread the word.
We'll be back soon with more thought-provoking explorations of the issues that matter most. Until then, happy learning.